So we know the latest Ram 1500 with its new 3-litre twin-turbo inline-6 engine is more powerful, has more torque, and according to my V-Box tests, is actually quicker than the old Hemi V8. The reason Ram swapped this engine is for fuel economy. So for this video, I thought I'd put that to the test by taking this example for an economy run from here in the heart of Sydney down to Melbourne, and we're going to try and do it on one tank of petrol. Before we get started, here are the numbers. Laramie Sport, 313 kilowatts, 635 newton meters of torque. Official consumption rate is 10.7 litres per 100, and it's got a 98 litre tank. You could do this run pretty easily with the Limited. It comes with a 125 litre tank. It does chew a little bit more fuel officially, 11.8 compared with this is 10.7. But if you put that into a calculator, 98 divided by 10.7, it spits out something like 9.15, times that by 100. So in theory, that's 915 Ks, but checking Google Maps, it looks like it's about 880 down to Melbourne from here. It's going to be pretty tight, considering that's theoretical. We're going to be driving in traffic, we're going to be driving at different speeds, there's going to be different conditions, wind and all that. Let's see how we go. So we've brimmed the tank. It says on the dashboard there's about 700 Ks range, but that's with the previous driving style. So I'm going to put some duct tape over here, impenetrable duct tape. You can't take this off. That way we know we're not going to put any more fuel in the tank. After all, it is an economy run. It's actually going to be a pretty close and tight run. The fuel gauge is saying 722 kilometres, and then Google Maps is saying about 880 down to Melbourne. So that's going to be quite tight. And we're starting in sort of dense traffic conditions. I mean, I'm moving along, but only going 40 kilometres an hour, a bit of stop-start. And then when we get to the other end, it's going to be kind of mid-afternoon or late to mid-afternoon down in Melbourne, and there's going to be some traffic there as well. So it's a realistic run, obviously mainly on the highway, but it'll be interesting to see what sort of economy and average fuel consumption we get out of this thing. And by the way, this isn't a paid promo or anything like that. I literally just want to see what sort of economy you can get with this new engine. I think it's a fantastic engine, 3 litres and 313 kilowatts, awesome specific power output, and the high output version over 400 kilowatts from 3 litres. It's fairly insane for this style of vehicle, especially. This is a mainstream workhorse. It's amazing that Ram is able to get those sort of figures out of it. And if we can get anywhere near that 10.7 litres per 100 official average, that's awesome as well. Let's see how we go. We've just got a support vehicle. It's got some jerry cans in the back, because mainly for safety. So when I do run out of fuel, we can top it up a bit and then get off the highway or wherever we are, get out of harm's way. What are the conditions? Well, I'm just going to drive this completely normally. I've got the aircon running. I am in 2-wheel drive, which is the default mode. I'm going to stick to the speed limit as I usually do when I drive on the public roads, but mainly for the tracking vehicle, just so they can get some shots and so on. And it's realistic, like that's the speed limit, so we'll just stick to that for the whole trip. Other than that, I'm not going to do anything special. I mean, we're not carrying any loads, we're not towing anything. It would be interesting to do a bit of a tow test as well to see what sort of economy you can get with that extra torque over the V8. It should be better towing as well, like it should be better economy compared with the V8 while towing. But for this test, yeah, I just want to see what this engine is capable of. "40 kilometres into the trip, and the trip computer is saying 10.6 litres per 100 kilometres. We need to, well, it needs to remain under 10.7 in order for us to get there before running out. If we average 10.3, I think we'll be okay, considering we've got a bit of dense traffic conditions on both ends, just to make up that difference. But yeah, if it starts to creep up to 11 or something like that on the highway, it's going to be very tight. Okay, we've just ticked over about 100 kilometres into the trip, and it's saying 10.7 litres per 100 kilometres on the trip computer. So that's obviously starting to cut it a little bit fine. The range, the onboard range calculator is saying 737 kilometres until empty. and then Google is saying about 770 until we get to Melbourne City. I think the range will jump up a little bit. As I said, I don't know how the previous driver or the tester was, what conditions they were in. They might have been driving in the city, so it's still taking a bit of that on board. It might start, it's actually just jumped up then, so 737, now it's saying 738. So the more we drive on the highway, that'll start to creep up a little bit, but hopefully it catches up to the destination of 770. These are great big vehicles to drive on a trip like this. Like, I'm very comfortable. I do have a bit of a soft spot for these. I know they're not for everyone. They're obviously not perfect in the middle of the dense city, just like a common diesel dual cab utes. They're quite long and, you know, not as practical as a small city runabout. But out in the country and on road trips and on the highway like this, it's awesome. Like, I'm just so comfortable and relaxed, and I've got so much space. It's almost cartoonish how much space it's got in here. I've got seat heating, seat cooling and all of that. So yeah, if you're planning to do some road trips, I think these are awesome for that. And real world 10.7, that's exactly the official average so far. That's pretty good, again, for something with 313 kilowatts. I reckon that's going to drop down a little bit. So once we're out of the city now, we're just cruising along, it should settle to a nice average, hopefully under 10.7. So as I said, unless it's under 10.7, I don't think we'll get there. If it's 10.3 or something like that, I think it will average out, factoring in that it's going to be a bit of traffic down the other end, and then we've just had some traffic in the city. That's going to use a bit more fuel. But yeah, 10.3 or something, I think we'll make it. Let's see how we go. We've just ticked over 200 kilometers into the trip, 203. The fuel gauge is actually still showing full, but the range calculator, the onboard range calculator, has overtaken the distance to destination. So we've got 698 kilometers range, and Google is saying 680 to the destination, which is great. Fuel consumption, I'm averaging 10.4, which is not ideal. We want it to be a tiny bit lower than that in order to get there, because as I said, it's going to use a little bit of fuel when we get closer to Melbourne, and it has used a bit of fuel coming out of Sydney. At both ends of the trip, it's going to be pretty high consumption, and in the middle is where we want it to be the absolute lowest, and this is where we're spending most of the time too. But even so, 10.4 in the real world with the aircon running. I'm just cruising along at 110. I've got the cruise control on as well, which is known to be not, you know, the most efficient way of driving. It is adaptive. Actually, side point there, this has got both adaptive and normal cruise control, which is great, because sometimes when you're in the, well, not in the city, but a bit more of a denser traffic situation, adaptive cruise control just pushes you to the back of the pack, and you might just want to use the normal old school cruise control just to maintain a speed, and, you know, sometimes you might get a little bit close, not dangerously close, but just a little bit close, whereas adaptive will just push you back. So it is good to have both options there, so you can alternate between the two. But yeah, I have had that running, and that's not the best for economy. But as I said, I want this to be a real world test. I want it to be realistic, and I genuinely want to see how far we can get out of one tank. That's just ticked over 400 kilometers now. I'm averaging 9.9 litres per 100, which I think is really good for a big, heavy and powerful vehicle like this. I've used a quarter of a tank, so I've got, or just over 3/4 left of fuel. So definitely a quarter of a tank to achieve 400 kilometers. The range is saying 551, and then the distance to destination is 464. So it looks like we will get there quite easily with these current figures though. So once we start getting closer to Melbourne, I think the traffic will pick up a little bit, will slow down, be a bit of stop start. The consumption is going to go up a little bit, but it still will be pretty close. If we get there and there's still a bit left in the tank, we're going to turn around and start heading north, and just to see how far you can actually get out of one tank of fuel. We're just coming into Holbrook now, which is about halfway, or a little bit beyond halfway. 494 kilometers. averaging 9.8 litres per 100 kilometres, which is still really good. And the fuel gauge has dropped just below 3/4 full. So we've still got 3/4 to go, or just under. The average, the range is showing 486 kilometres, and then the distance to destination is 385. So we've actually got a 100 kilometre leeway there. It's actually spreading that gap further and further, which is good. It means we will probably get there. It just depends on what sort of traffic and what sort of driving conditions we're going to be in when we approach the outskirts of Melbourne and as we actually go into Melbourne. 600 k's down now. I'm still averaging 9.8 litres per 100, so it's definitely a steady cruising consumption rate. I'm just approaching half a tank of petrol, actually still a fair bit above. I'm probably more like 2/3 of a tank still left. The range is saying around 390 kilometres at the moment, although it did just drop down a touch. But we've got 272 kilometres to go according to Google. So there's definitely a decent gap there now, 120 kilometre gap there, and that's grown from being the opposite way around too. So quite interesting that on the highway it definitely is it's good at coasting along and cruising along. I'm pretty sure we'll make it there, judging by these figures. But as I said, if we make it there, we'll go drive pretty much into the city and then turn around and start coming back north and see how far we can get. This is getting a little bit ridiculous actually. We've just passed 700 kilometres and it's just gone under a half a tank of petrol. I mean, just over it. Well, it's used just over a half a tank of petrol. That's pretty amazing. Like, I know it is a big tank, 98 litres, but that average there, 9.8 in the real world, I think is fantastic. This is, probably starting to sound like an ad or something. I reckon I've achieved higher than that. I have achieved higher than that, or seen higher than that in the diesel dual cab 4-cylinder utes. So for this big thing to consume 9.8 in the real world, I think is absolutely awesome. I remember driving one of these about a month and a half ago or 2 months ago, and took the kids and the wife for a bit of a drive on the weekend, and I do remember it using surprisingly low amount of fuel. So that's why I thought, do a proper highway run, not an economy run. As I said, this has got the aircon on, and I'm just cruising along with cruise control, and it's achieving 9.8, and I think that's fantastic. Just for an update, I've got 316 kilometres range left according to the dashboard, and then we've got 170 kilometres of distance to destination. So there you go, that's grown even more. It's about 140 kilometres gap, so we should have 140 kilometres left over. In terms of when we get there, we'll have 140 kilometres left over of fuel. So then we'll turn around and start heading back, which is good because I want to be able to get back on the highway to start heading north again. I'd rather run out of fuel on the highway, because if we're in the city or in a tunnel or something like that, it just might be a little bit dangerous. So if we can get to the city, turn around and start coming back, that will be awesome. And if we're on a highway like this, I can start to monitor it fairly closely. I'll stick in the left lane. The support car, they can get behind me and stick their hazards on when it's ready, and then I'll pull over and get right off the road. We'll put a little bit of fuel in it and then just get out of the way. If you know my videos, I'm very honest and very transparent. The support car's been doing some shots, so it's got some time-lapse footage, and it's taking some tracking shots as well. So that's not actually from this car, but that's just for visuals only. It's not actually, it's got nothing to do with the economy or the figures or anything like that. You can also keep an eye on the time on the dashboard. It's just after 4 o'clock. We've been driving all day. It's saying on the dash, we've been driving for 7 hours and 20 minutes. So yeah, keep an eye on that. The sun's going down. We'll definitely get there when it's dark. and I'll try and do some pieces to camera with some lights. But I was just thinking, I wonder what the old Hemi would do on a trip like this. That has cylinder deactivation, I'm pretty sure. But like really, that should do even better than this, because this produces more power and more torque. The old V8 was about 291 kilowatts. This is 313, and it produced around 556 Newton meters. This is 635. So this should be thirstier than the old V8, really. And yeah, 9.8, it might not sound that impressive if you're comparing it to, you know, a little hatchback or whatever. But as I said, 313 kilowatts. This is not a shy engine. This is it's actually really quick, as we've seen, like 0 to 100 in the 6 seconds. That's not hanging around. That's actually really quick. So it has the potential to be fast, and it's got the power there, but it's kind of the best of both worlds, where you can get on the highway and just cruise along, and it doesn't use much fuel for its power output and for its size. But yeah, I don't see why we won't get there at this point. We've got 291 kilometers range and only 141 kilometers to go. So I'm pretty sure we'll get there, no worries. It's going to be about how far we get back. And we're doing this all in one day. I mean, it's a big day for me, but I don't want to split it up into a second day. Otherwise, you know, you might question, oh, did we put extra fuel in it overnight or something like that? I want it to be very consistent and transparent. So we're just going to keep driving. I want to see the engine actually spit and splutter to a stop safely anyway. Well, I must say I'm pretty impressed. We're only 100 kilometers out of Melbourne, and I've got about 250 kilometers range according to the onboard computer. It looks like we'll make it there pretty easily. I mean, things could change further down. We might run into some traffic or something and it will cause us to use more fuel, but I think by the looks of it anyway, we're going to make it pretty easily. And it means we're going to have to drive back a fair bit. I've been up since 4:15. It's now 4:54, so 12 hours pretty much 12 hours of driving. I feel okay. I'm definitely tired. Has it been fun? Well, not really, but I've had more than my fair share of snacks and chocolates and so on. But yeah, we'll go to the city now and see what sort of range we have left when we get to Melbourne. That's the main thing. I want to actually get touchdown in Melbourne somewhere. All right, last piece to camera for driving on the way down at least. The sun's pretty much gone now, so I've been driving all day. We've done 800 kilometers and 9.8. It's locked on 9.8 litres per 100 kilometers on the highway. That's, again, pretty good. It's saying the range is 220 kilometers to go before it's empty. It's about a third of a tank full at the moment. And then Google is saying we've got about 70 kilometers to go. So we're easily going to do this. Again, unless something weird happens up ahead, we're going to easily do this, and then we'll have to turn around and start driving back. We should have set the bar a little bit higher maybe, but yeah, I was not expecting that. We did the numbers and we thought, yeah, that's, by the way, we didn't do a recce or anything like that. We haven't done this yet. This is the first time we're doing it in real time basically. We just looked at the numbers and thought, yeah, that should be doable. It should be pretty interesting as well. Bit of drama with the video, but it's actually not that dramatic at all. But anyway, let's see how we go. All right, we made it to Melbourne. There's a Melbourne tram right there. It's actually made it all the way here on one tank. We've still got a bit of juice left. I'll show you the dashboard now. I'm surprised we actually made it all the way down though. It's averaging about 9.6. We've done 875 kilometers. We've still got 155 kilometers range, a quarter of a tank. And yeah, we're in Melbourne. That's amazing. I was not expecting to be able to make it all the way down here on one tank. So now we're going to have to, I don't really want to, but it makes for a better video if we start heading back and see how far we can actually get out of a full tank. Well, we haven't touched that. That's genuine, a full tank of petrol. Into Melbourne and back out again. As I said, I'm very surprised that, you know, it's a 98 litre tank. So yes, it's going to get a good distance, but that average of 9.6 it is saying now, is awesome in the real world. And as I've said, air conditioning running, not driving in a sort of eco manner. I don't have it in eco mode. There is no eco mode actually. I've just got it in auto mode. I do have it in 2-wheel drive, but that's, you know, just the default mode. I've left the stop start on, although we haven't really stopped and started that much anyway. And that's including some traffic driving as well. When we came into Melbourne, there was a crash or something, so we had to do a bit of stop start driving. And yes, still 9.6 for the entire trip. Total drive time 9 hours and 25 minutes. That's excluding the stops. So I'll keep driving. It's saying 146 kilometers range, and we've done 882 kilometers total. We might actually crack 1,000 Ks in this thing. Yep, I'm still driving. I thought this might be my last piece to camera, but I've just ticked over 1,000 kilometers, and the fuel light is on. It turned on not that long ago. It's saying I've still got 56 kilometers range. If you're wondering why the time has jumped forward, we just had to stop for dinner. But there you go there on the maps. That's back to Melbourne. What's that, 125 kilometers back to Melbourne. But that's 1,000 kilometers out of a tank in the Ram 1500 standard output. That is pretty crazy. I was not expecting that. So what we're going to do now is continue driving until it conks out, but our hotel is actually back in Melbourne, so we're going to turn around. We've been driving for probably an hour out of Melbourne, or 128 k's out of Melbourne, so we're going to actually turn around and start heading south again to get to our hotel. Otherwise we're just going to be driving pointlessly north, just in case you've noticed, hey, that's on the south side of the road or whatever. That's what's happened there. But next time I jump to the camera, I'll be conking out, and yeah, we'll just see exactly how many kilometers we get maximum. Sorry about the low light, by the way. It's completely pitch black. Hopefully you're getting some of the details here. I mean, the important stuff is the figures down here on the dash. 1,002 kilometers, still averaging 9.6 liters per 100. The only difference is I've turned the aircon off, not to save fuel or anything, but because it's 9 degrees outside, so there's no need for aircon. And that's, I usually do that in my own car or whatever. I don't constantly run with the aircon, so that's not for economy reasons. But anyway, I think we've proven the point. We can get from Sydney to Melbourne in the Ram 1500 standard output with just me in it, no load in the back and all of that, but it is possible to do quite easily actually. It's going to conk out any minute now. It's been on low, so it went from 18 kilometers just to straight low. That was about 25 kilometers ago. So because we've been driving on the highway in this kind of best case scenario, it's been calculating that the whole time, so it might actually be pretty accurate in terms of how low it actually is, but we're just going to have to see. It's actually a little bit nerve-wracking driving like this, because we're on the highway. The support cars behind me that now they're about 20 meters back, and as soon as I splutter or I'm going to indicate to get off the road, they're going to hit the hazards to let people know behind them. I mean, it's pretty quiet at the moment, to let them know that there's something going on. And then when I pull over, they're going to pull over about 20 meters back behind me with the hazards on, just so people get a nice warning, and then we'll put some fuel in it and then get back on the road and get out of harm's way. But yeah, that's still showing low. The fuel gauge has seen better days. It's definitely right down the bottom. Yeah, I don't know if that last little line is still yet to go. Hopefully you can see that okay. But yeah, still averaging 9.6. We've done 1,079 kilometers on the same tank so far. Will we hit 1,100? Let's see. It's still going. We've just clicked over 1,100 kilometers, and it's still going. It's saying low. The fuel gauge hasn't moved. That last little line, I'm not sure if you can see that, but there's 2 red lines and an orange line. That orange line hasn't disappeared. I don't know if it does or not. But yeah, 1,100, we worked it out, it's about the equivalent of going from Sydney to Melbourne, then back to Wangaratta. So you could, yeah, potentially get back to Albury, maybe, I don't know, but that's probably a bit of a stretch. But if you're wondering, still managing to average 9.6, I haven't touched that. Driving time, 11 hours and 48 minutes. so far. That doesn't include stops and so on. I'm just sticking to the left lane now too, so the speed has dropped a little bit because I'm behind a truck at the moment, because I want to be able to just get straight off. There we go, I've just heard a splutter. It's yeah, definitely coughing. Get right off the road. Sorry, that camera's just gone flat. So I've been just sitting here waiting for it to splutter. There we go, look at the engine revs there. So that's completely out of out of petrol. That was actually pretty nerve-wracking to do that, but it's done. Where did it go? I'm just trying to get back to the start stop required. Yep, definitely out of gas. There we go, 1,117 kilometers, averaging 9.5 out of one tank. That's pretty amazing, but that's definitely out of gas. I wouldn't recommend anybody do this. It was just that I had a support car, so thanks to Ram Australia for providing some support there. And we've got some extra fuel that we can just put in the tank to get us out of harm's way. Luckily, I was able to get off the highway, you know, as far as I can, so we're out of harm's way. We've got the support car behind us with the hazards on as well. But there you go. That's I've never done that before, running it all the way down to empty. It's more exciting and sort of anxious than I thought it would be. Pretty cool.